Where is the hair hidden in this episode? What were the hidden clues about this episode's twists? What significance does the title have? We'll be covering these questions and more in this video. Welcome to Square Eyes, a channel where we recap, review and take a sideways look at your favourite TV programmes. This video will be looking at the 4th episode of the 9th and final series of Inside Number 9, called Ctrl Alt Escape. Let's jump straight into the recap. The episode opens up in the locked and loaded escape room number 9. The room is called The Killer's Lair, and is set up like a messy crime scene that a serial killer has recently left with all sorts of clues left behind. A married couple with 2 teenage daughters are being introduced to the room by Doug, who works at the escape room. Jason, the dad, is clearly the most keen on doing the activity, and the other 3 are being dragged along to indulge his interest. Doug runs them through the basic rules. They have 60 minutes to escape and have to work as a team to solve the puzzles that will help them to escape. They are investigating a serial killer called Dr. Death, which has the eldest daughter Millie groaning at the predictable plotline. But Amy, the youngest daughter, is freaked out by the grisly theme of the escape room, and Doug's hammy acting as he sets the scene. The setup for the room is that the family have been trapped in the serial killer's basement after stumbling into his cabin. To give it an authentic feel, Doug chains Jason's leg to the bed in the room, so he's stuck in place. As Doug leaves, he points out the walkie-talkie that they can use to ask for clues if they get stuck. But they can only ask for help 3 times, so they have to use it sparingly. Doug leaves and the family start looking for clues, and in these first few moments we find out quite a lot about the characters from how they act as they explore the room. Jason, who's the dad, is the taskmaster, who's trying to organise everyone and keep them focused on their goal, which makes sense as we found out he's ex-military, but he's retired due to ill health. Millie isn't taking it very seriously and mocks the whole premise of the thing and teases her little sister. Amy is very jumpy and seems scared of everything, and Lynn, the mum, isn't all that invested in the escape room, but is trying to keep everyone happy and tries to smooth over all the disputes between everybody else. Lynn pulls back a curtain and discovers a filing cabinet that's secured with a combination padlock. The drawers of the filing cabinets have women's names on them, suggesting they relate to the killer's victims. To get inside, they'll have to find the code for the padlock. Millie finds the first number, in a picture of one of Dr. Death's victims. Then, as Jason and Amy are talking over the potential clues in the scrapbook, Millie talks to her mum about a secret that they both know about, but Jason doesn't. It's related to something that's happening later on, but that's all we find out because Lynn shuts down the conversation, saying she doesn't want to talk about it in front of Dad. Millie seems frustrated about her shutting down the conversation, and says they'll continue playing Happy Families, but it's her mum that will have to live with it. But obviously we don't know what it is yet. Then we cut to Jason finding the next number for the code, which is hidden in some text of the journal that he's investigating with Amy. The next clue points him towards a green stiletto shoe, which Lynn searches for under the bed. While she's looking, Jason tells that he's heard her whispering with Millie earlier, and he doesn't like being excluded from conversations. Lynn acknowledges what he says, but doesn't tell him anything about what they were talking about. Lynn finds the green stiletto, which is a size 6, giving them another number for the code. As Jason is jotting down the numbers they've found so far, Lynn sits next to him and tells him tenderly that she's never wanted to be with anyone else. It comes completely out of the blue to Jason and obviously unsettles him. Then Lynn says that it's been a hard couple of years, but she needs him to know that she still loves him. This doesn't sound good at all, and Jason's reaction shows that he's thinking the same thing. He asks her if she's leaving him, but she just gives him a kiss. And Millie decides to speed things along with the puzzle by getting a clue, which her dad isn't impressed about because he wants to enjoy the experience. This prompts Millie to make a pointed remark about how her mother had told her that she shouldn't be afraid to ask for help, alluding to a conversation where she'd been encouraged to get therapy. Jason is shocked by this, but there's no time to discuss it further because Doug connects over the walkie-talkie. He tries to give vague hints, but Millie doesn't have any patience, so he just tells them to use the map to get the missing number. Amy finds a map on the wall, so they go to take a look, apart from Jason, who's still chained to the bed. When the victim's last known locations are connected with a piece of string, it reveals a number 5, which is the final number needed for the code for the padlock. Millie puts the code into the padlock, but rather than unlocking the filing cabinet, the whole thing moves out of the way, revealing a secret passageway. Lynn and Amy explore the passage, and Millie is about to go too, but Jason pleads with her to stay to help him find the key to stop him from being stuck to the bed. As Millie searches for the key, her dad asks her what's going on between her and her mum. Then the conversation moves on to their difficulties connecting with each other, and Jason's fears about Millie going away to university, and how they'll lose their connection. He tells her that he doesn't want her to go, but he wants her to do it for herself, so she can show how independent she can be. In response, Millie tells a story about how when she was little she went ice skating. She clung to the sides and was scared to let go, but her dad encouraged her to let go and skate off into the middle. She was worried about falling over and someone skating over her fingers, which must be common because I had the exact same fear when I went ice skating. Millie then breaks the tension in the moment by tipping a box of Dr. Death's victim's fingers onto the floor, and they share a laugh and a cuddle. Then Lynn calls through an intercom to say that Millie needs to crawl through the passageway as they need her help getting the key. Millie leaves her dad, saying that he shouldn't let Dr. Death take him while she's gone. Jason then starts searching the room for something to get him out of the shackles. He finds a locked box with another combination lock. The code is hidden in the coloured paper clips in the drawer. Jason is obviously an experienced escape room player, as he cracked the code straight away and unlocked the box. Inside is a magnet on a bit of wire that he uses to dangle down a metal pipe. The magnet pulls out a UV light that can be used to detect things that the naked eye can't see. Don't use these in dodgy hotel rooms that you stay in unless you want an unpleasant shock. Jason scans the room with his UV light with the normal lights out, and it reveals a set of creepy-looking handprints that lead behind a picture frame. When he takes down the picture, the words "No Escape" have been written on the wall. Jason lines up his hand with one of the handprints on the wall, and it seems like a perfect match. No time to worry about this too much though, because the door opens and Dr. Death walks in with big clumpy boots. Jason hides under the bed to escape detection, and while he's there, Dr. Death takes an axe off the wall and walks through the room. Then Doug barges in and apologises that there's been a glitch with the computer and they have to give it an emergency reboot. It's supposed to provide a live feed from the room that the other three are in, but it's malfunctioned. It's been dormant for too long. While the computer's rebooting, Doug asks Jason how he's getting on and says that his daughters seem to be coping well, or at least they're putting on a brave face. Jason then says it's nice to be doing things as a family while they still can, to which Doug replies that they're going to do just fine. Then the computer starts working. Doug tells Jason that his family will be able to communicate with him directly using the intercom, but he's going to have to find another way to communicate with them. It doesn't take Jason long to find a button that controls a light in the other room, which Jason uses to communicate with his wife and daughters through Morse code. To access the key, they need a 4-letter word to unlock the screen, which is protecting the jar with the key in it. Lynn has worked out that because there's Morse code instructions at their end, that it must mean that Jason has to communicate the word from his end to them. Jason tries to work out what the word might be, but comes up blank, so uses the walkie-talkie to ask for a hint. Doug's subtle hints fail, so he eventually just tells them that he has to hit spacebar on the computer to change the camera angle to reveal the word. Cycling through the camera angles available eventually shows one with a prominent star in the foreground, which is obviously the code word. Jason blinks the code through for them to decode at the other end. It works and they get access to the jar with a key in it. The moment of success is soured when Dr. Death appears in the room with Lynn, Millie and Amy in. Jason is powerless to do anything as he's still chained to the bed in the other room, so he can only watch on the computer monitor as Dr. Death attacks his family. It all seems a bit too realistic, and panic creeps into Jason's voice as he calls through to Lynn. Then we see the reaction of Amy, as she looks scared stiff. Millie is being physically grabbed by Dr. Death, and Lynn is trying to pull her free as they all scream. Then the camera feed cuts away. Jason calls down the walkie-talkie for assistance, and as he does we see brief flashes of his face in close-up, with his eyes taped up in a hospital bed. He continues to shout for help more urgently, and we see more flashes of him in a hospital, and hear beeping of hospital machinery. Then we switch to the hospital room, and Jason's in a coma. The escape room was a metaphor for him being trapped inside the coma, trying to find a way out. Lynn, Millie and Amy are waiting by his bedside. Lynn says to Amy that she doesn't think that he's able to think anything anymore, and it's only the machines keeping him alive. Next we see Doug again, only now he's a nurse. He tends to Jason, and while he flashes his little torch in his eyes, he transports us back into the escape room. Amy and Millie run up to him and tell him it's not a game, it's real. Lynn then follows into the room, gives Jason the key and says Dr. Death is behind her and he hasn't got much time. She says that she's going to take the girls and go. He has to save himself. She tells him she loves him, gives him a kiss and then leaves him with the key. Dr. Death is entering the escape room as Jason frantically tries to get the key into the padlock. Meanwhile, a real doctor has entered the hospital room and is explaining the procedure for withdrawing Jason's life support, because they believe he no longer has any brain function as far as they can tell. Then we see the doctor in the escape room swinging for Jason, but he's diving out of the way of his blows. Then in the hospital, he's been taken off his life support machine to gently ease him on his way. It's not relaxed in the escape room though, as Jason tussles with Dr. Death and lands a nasty-looking elbow in his face and gets away from him. He pulls at the door handle and pleads to be let out, but the door is locked. The doctor catches up with him and pulls him up by his throat. Then the doctor lets him down and goes away to prepare an injection, giving Jason a chance to use the walkie-talkie again to ask for the final clue. Doug tells him that he needs to give a passcode with a single digit. When Jason asks for more help, Doug says it's been staring him in the face all along. Then Jason looks at the mirror, which shows the lights flickering on the E and T of the exit sign, leaving only the X and the I, which in the mirror makes the Roman numeral for 9. Jason radios through the number 9. This seems to translate to Jason coming back to life in the hospital bed in the real world, as the final image of the episode is Jason opening his eyes. This was another great episode of Inside Number 9. Like with the second episode in the series, The Trolley Problem, it wasn't packed full of jokes, but it made up for that with all the drama it squeezed into half an hour. Nearly all the dialogue in the first 22 minutes of the story takes on a new meaning once it's revealed that Jason's in a coma, and the escape room is inside his mind. The conversations with his family tend to have double meanings. There are too many examples to list off, but Jason says things like, "I don't like being excluded from conversations," and "You're not leaving me, are you?" and "Don't cancel me," and they all feel more like they were a reference to his coma state rather than the events inside the escape room. And the conversation that seemed a little bit too deep for an afternoon of family fun suddenly made a lot more sense, such as Lynn telling Jason that she loved him despite the few hard years that they'd had, and Millie saying it was too late for the conversation Jason wanted to have with her. There were more obvious links to Jason being in a coma too, such as him literally being chained to a bed, signifying that he was stuck in a hospital bed, and later his family could talk to him, but he couldn't communicate directly to them, and he had to communicate through Morse code. The writing was very cleverly done, and it was one of those things that really benefit from a repeat viewing, because the second time you can watch it knowing the twist and see what the meaning of each line was meant to be. In this series we've seen Steve Pemberton really go all out with his performances, as a drag queen and as a murderous psychotherapist, but in this one he's a lot more down to earth. As an ex-military dad who was fighting to stay alive, it was perhaps a more humdrum role than normal, but he brought a lot of humanity to it, and it was great to watch. Given how often Inside Number 9 finishes with the most gruesome and destructive endings, it was a bit of a shock to see this one have a happy ending, but it was welcome. It was quite an emotional story. I'm not sure as a viewer, after being taken on this journey, I wanted to finish it with the sick man's life support being turned off and him dying. It was much better to have a positive and optimistic note to finish on, and it still felt plausible enough. I'm not a medical expert, but it doesn't seem completely unreasonable that someone in a deep coma might be shocked back to life by having their life support switched off, even if it is a bit of a stretch. As Inside Number 9 gets closer to the end of its run, I'm pleased that the quality level of the episodes is remaining so high. It's good that they're leaving the series at the top of their game, and this was another of the episodes that I've really enjoyed watching. I hope that they can keep it up over the remaining 2 episodes of the series. Favourite line in this episode came from Jason, when Millie was complaining about the escape room being in a windowless room with a wee-stained mattress, and he replied, "Look on the bright side, it'll help you get used to your university digs." Having been in my fair share of student houses over the years, I can confirm that most self-respecting serial killers wouldn't be willing to use them as their lairs. I think the title of this episode is a bit of a hint towards the twist, as the keyboard command Ctrl Alt Esc is a shortcut to minimise your current program and run it in the background, and a coma is a bit like your body's way of minimising your brain's function and putting it on minimal power mode. So I think that might be where the idea comes from, alongside the fact it obviously includes the word escape, as in escape room. The hair in this week's episode was back to being tricky to spot again. It was in the foreground of the CCTV image on the other room that Jason was looking at when he was talking to Lynn. It's more of a silhouette than anything, but if you look carefully you can see it. It was interesting to see Steve Pemberton playing a character who was tackling puzzles in an escape room in this episode. As in the real world, he's recently been appearing on the comedy show Taskmaster, where he takes on tasks and challenges which feel quite similar to the kind of things he does in this episode, though the Taskmaster ones tend to be a bit sillier. Doug, the man who works in the escape room, is also a frustrated actor and mentioned he's hoping to get a role in a 3-man touring company, performing Much Ado About Nothing around schools in Germany. This feels like it might be a nod towards the League of Gentlemen character that Reece Shearsmith played called Ollie Plimsolls. He was also a lead in a 3-man theatre troupe who performed plays about social issues. I mentioned in my recap that you shouldn't use a UV light in grotty hotel rooms. I said this because I've become a bit obsessed with a YouTube channel called Hotel Hunter. It's a channel made by a man who goes to some of the worst hotels in the UK and films how bad they are, including turning off the lights and shining his UV torch on the walls. The scene where Jason shines his UV torch reminded me of those videos. I'll put a link to the channel in the show notes, but please only click it if you've got a strong stomach and you're not eating anything. The next episode is the penultimate one in the series, and it's called The Curse of the Ninth. It's described as an Edwardian chiller about a piano tuner who is drawn into a centuries-old curse when he visits a large country house. Sounds like another good one. It's also got Natalie Dormer and Eddie Marzanin as guest actors, so my expectation levels are very high for that one. Thank you for watching this video. If you made it this far, I'd like to ask a small favour, ask you to go an extra step and click the subscribe button. Currently, 95% of the people watching my videos are not subscribed. Clicking subscribe means that you're less likely to miss future videos, and it'll also help my channel to grow. That's all for now. I'll be back shortly with a video for the next episode. Goodbye.